Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, folks, deep into the world of military strategy. Specifically, we'll be exploring the art of war,
Sun Tzu.
a classic.
A classic indeed. We've got excerpts from the text itself, and we'll also be looking at some insightful commentaries. It's really unlocked the secrets.
It's amazing how relevant Sun Tzu's work remains, even after all these centuries.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing that jumped out at me was his emphasis on discipline
Hmm.
and preparation. He has this great line, "The troops you advance against the enemy must be like stones you throw against eggs."
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does, and it emphasizes how important it is to be prepared.
Right. Going into any situation unprepared, well, that's like bringing an egg to a stone fight.
Exactly. Sun Tzu believed a disciplined army is an unstoppable force, and he wasn't afraid to make his point, that's for sure.
They're talking about the story with the King of Wu's concubines.
Yeah, that's the one. When he beheaded them for giggling during training. Seems a bit extreme, maybe. It does sound extreme, yeah. But it really drives home the point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Obedience in the heat of battle. It can mean the difference between victory and defeat.
That's a good point. And it's not just blindly following orders either, right?
No, not at all. It's about trust. Shared purpose, really. Knowing the mission. Trusting your leaders. And interestingly, these ideas resonate with modern leadership too, especially in organizations that value, you know, transparency,
Yeah.
collaboration, things like that.
So you're saying it's not just top-down authority, but building a culture where everyone's aligned, everyone's working toward that common goal.
Precisely.
And this actually ties into what Cao Cao was saying in his preface about military preparedness being a foundation for, well, societal harmony, like a stable society.
Absolutely. If a ruler can create that sense of unity, of purpose, within his army,
Right.
well, that translates into a more stable, more prosperous society for everyone.
I like that, a ripple effect.
Exactly. It all starts with a strong foundation.
And speaking of foundations, we can talk about Sun Tzu's 5 constant factors. These are kind of like a general's checklist for success.
They are indeed moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline. He covers all the bases.
It's interesting that he starts with moral law, like ethics.
I think that's crucial. It's not just about military might. It's about the ethical foundation of leadership. Think about it. A ruler who is just, who has the support of his people, that ruler will inspire his troops to fight with courage, with conviction.
Because they believe in what they're fighting for.
Exactly. And again, this resonates with modern ideas of leadership, doesn't it? Purpose-driven organizations. People are more dedicated, more motivated when they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
A shared mission, yeah.
Yeah.
So winning hearts and minds is just as important as having like a powerful army, and this principle applies far beyond the battlefield, right?
Absolutely. Sun Tzu believed that true victory comes from understanding the interconnectedness of these factors. So you have the moral high ground, the environment, the leader, and the strategy. All these things working together in harmony.
Not just brute force, but strategy, a deep understanding of human nature.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to one of Sun Tzu's most famous principles, doesn't it? Deception.
Ah, yes. All warfare is based on deception. It's a powerful statement, but I gotta admit, I started feeling a little uneasy here. Is it really ethical basing your entire strategy on, well, tricking your opponent?
I understand your concern. It's a valid question. But we need to remember the context. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War during a time of constant warfare in ancient China. His goal wasn't to glorify deception. His goal was to find ways to minimize bloodshed.
So, to achieve victory as quickly as possible, even if it meant, bending the rules a little.
In a way, yes, but it wasn't just about lying. It was about understanding your opponent's psychology, exploiting their weaknesses, manipulating their perceptions, all to gain an advantage.
He gives some specific examples, right? Like appearing weak when you're strong, feigning disorder, using baits to lure the enemy into traps.
Yes, and these are tactics that are still used today, not just in warfare, but in business, in politics, even in personal relationships
It
sometimes.
makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. Think about how companies use marketing to create a certain image, a perception of their brand, or how politicians use rhetoric to sway public opinion. It's all about shaping the narrative.
And it's not just about offense either, right? Sun Tzu stresses that deception, well, it applies to both attack and defense.
Absolutely. Whether you're the aggressor or the defender, making your opponent uncertain, making them vulnerable, that's key to gaining the upper hand. Think about the story of the Songnu, feigning weakness.
Emperor Cao Cao. blinded by the desire for that quick victory.
He ignored the warning signs, the signs of a trap, and he paid the price.
It's a reminder to never get complacent, even when you think you're winning. You constantly have to assess the situation, gather intelligence, adapt your strategy.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And this leads us to another crucial aspect of Sun Tzu's philosophy, the importance of speed and efficiency in warfare. He was actually against protracted warfare.
Really? That's interesting. Wouldn't a longer war give you more time to wear down the enemy?
That's what you might think. But Sun Tzu understood that prolonged conflict. Well, it's incredibly costly. In terms of resources, A&D morale, think about the logistics. Supplying an army, over a long period, food, weapons, manpower, it all puts a huge strain on your own resources.
And can even lead to instability back home, economically.
Precisely. And it's not just economics either. Sun Tzu understood the psychological toll of war on everyone involved, soldiers, A&D civilians, fatigue, despair, a breakdown of social order. He believed the longer a war drags on, the more difficult it becomes to win.
To achieve a decisive victory.
Yes, and to establish lasting peace. He was ahead of his time in understanding the complexities of warfare, really, and its impact on society as a whole.
So what was his solution to avoid these drawn-out conflicts?
Swift, decisive action. He was all about thorough preparation and swift execution. Minimize the need for reinforcements. Keep those supply lines short.
He even encouraged foraging on the enemy.
Right. Bring war material with you from home, but forage on the enemy. Thus, the army will have food enough for its needs. Resourceful and adaptable.
But he also warned about the burden on the people back home. If the army has to be maintained from afar, prices go up, resources dwindle, it's everyday people who suffer most.
He's emphasizing the long-term consequences, not just the immediate gains.
A valuable lesson for leaders in any field.
Absolutely. So the key takeaway here, speed and efficiency are crucial. Whether it's a product launch, a campaign, a personal project, it's better to move quickly, decisively, than to get bogged down in planning and preparation.
I like that. Sun Tzu said it best himself.
Yeah, he did. Thus, though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays.
So, on to Sun Tzu's analysis of terrain and maneuvering. He outlines 9 types of ground, each with unique challenges and opportunities. It's like a masterclass in, well, battlefield assessment and adaptation.
The 9 situations.
Yeah.
All about understanding the landscape of your conflict, tailoring your strategy accordingly.
Thinking like a chess player, right. Anticipating those moves, using the terrain to your advantage.
Exactly. He's saying that every situation is unique. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to strategy.
Let's look at a few that stood out to me. First, dispersive ground. Your own territory, where you'd think your soldiers would be, well, more motivated. But Sun Tzu warns against it. Why is that?
It's a fascinating insight. He recognized that fighting on home ground can be a disadvantage. Your troops might be worried about protecting their families, their homes, more concerned with that than with strategic objectives.
It's like that saying, familiarity breeds contempt. When you're comfortable, you lose your edge.
That's a good way to put it. It's not just physical comfort, it's the psychological impact. Your soldiers might be thinking about home, their families, everything going on outside the conflict, distracted.
It's losing their focus.
Exactly. So even when you're in a seemingly advantageous position, you've got to maintain focus, discipline. And this applies beyond the battlefield, Leaders who struggle to motivate their teams when things are good, or individuals who lose drive after achieving some success. Complacency can be just as dangerous as any threat.
So hemmed in ground. When you're trapped, surrounded, this sounds terrifying.
It does. But Sun Tzu saw this as an opportunity for cunning, deception, turning that disadvantage into an advantage.
Like Hannibal, his escape from the Apennines Mountains. Completely surrounded by Romans, he managed to outsmart them, tying burning twigs to oxen, driving them toward the Roman lines. The Romans panicked, thinking they were under attack. Hannibal slipped away under cover of darkness.
A brilliant example of deception and psychological warfare, overcoming impossible odds. Even in the most desperate situations, there's always a chance for victory. If you keep your cool and exploit those weaknesses in your opponent's position.
Stay calm. Look for creative solutions.
Exactly. Use your wits, your courage.
Find that unconventional path to victory, even when it seems like, well, all the odds are stacked against you. Okay, so desperate ground, the last stand, nowhere to retreat, fight with everything you've got.
This is where Sun Tzu's emphasis on mental fortitude comes into play. He says a surrounded army must be given a way out to retreat. Soldiers must be made to believe they are superior to the enemy. What they lack in numbers, they must make up in fighting spirit.
powerful stuff. It's about instilling hope, determination, even when all hope seems lost.
Leadership, inspiration, the power of belief. Sun Tzu knew that a desperate army, well, they're dangerous because they've got nothing left to lose. He knew how to use that.
Yeah. So, even when facing overwhelming odds, courage and determination can make all the difference. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog.
Well said. This principle, it applies to any challenge in life. Setbacks, obstacles, even a difficult task. Believing in yourself, believing in your ability to overcome it. That's half the battle right there.
So tap into that inner strength, resilience, even when you feel like giving up.
Exactly. Sun Tzu reminds us that even in the most desperate situations, there's a chance for victory, if you keep your composure. Exploit those weaknesses, and never give up hope.
It's a powerful message. Strategy isn't just about tactics and maneuvers, it's about the human element, the courage, the determination, the belief in yourself and your team.
Beautifully said. And that brings us to what Sun Tzu considered the most crucial element of warfare: intelligence gathering.
He dedicates an entire chapter to spies. He seems to think that having accurate information about your enemy, well, it's more valuable than any weapon.
He absolutely does. And he starts that chapter with a powerful reminder: the cost of war, human life and the economic resources. He says raising a host of 100,000 men and marching them great distances entails heavy loss on the people and a drain on the resources of the state.
A stark reminder.
It is. But then he argues to remain ignorant of the enemy's condition simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver in honors and emoluments is the height of inhumanity.
Wow. So investing in intelligence isn't just smart, it's morally right.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. The more you know about your enemy, the better equipped you are to win. Minimize those costs. Human costs. He's elevating intelligence gathering
Right.
from just a tactical thing to a matter of ethical responsibility.
Fascinating.
He goes on to say this: foreknowledge, knowing your enemy, their plans, strengths, weaknesses. It can't come from spirits, from experience, not even from deductive reasoning. The only way: a well-developed network of spies.
And he's very specific about this, outlining 5 types of spies: local, inward, converted, doomed, and surviving. A taxonomy of espionage.
It really is. Each with its own role, its own method for infiltrating, for getting that information back to you.
Local spies are recruited from the enemy's own people, giving you insights into their culture, morale, even their strategies.
Then you've got inward spies, enemy officials who've been, well, bribed or persuaded to work for you. Risky, but it could yield some incredibly valuable information.
And converted spies. These are enemy spies who've been captured, turned to your side. First-hand knowledge. Invaluable insights. It's a complex art, intelligence gathering. It takes careful planning, psychological insight, and understanding of human motivation.
Precisely. And Sun Tzu takes it even further, saying the end and aim of spying in all its 5 varieties is knowledge of the enemy. And this knowledge can only be derived in the first instance from the converted spy. He believed that a skilled converted spy was the most valuable asset.
Makes sense. But what about the ethics of it all? How do you know you can trust them? What about the morality of using deception, manipulation to turn someone against their own people?
These are tough questions. Complex issues, really, ones that we continue to grapple with today. I think the important thing is to acknowledge the complexities, the nuances of intelligence gathering. It's not just about gathering information, it's about understanding the human element and the ethical implications of your actions.
That brings us to one of my favorite stories from Sun Tzu, General Li Song and his clever use of an inward spy to win a decisive victory. It's a wild story. Li Song was besieging this city, right? And he plants this rumor that the water supply has been cut off.
Oh yeah, classic psychological warfare. He even has his soldiers pretending to leave their posts, like they're giving up. And Lo Shang, the enemy commander, well, he totally falls for it.
Hook, line, and sinker. He sends a detachment of soldiers in to check on the water supply, but they walk right into Li Song's trap.
It's brilliant. They'd secretly opened a gate for Li Xian's troops, who then storm the city and win a decisive victory.
Talk about using a spy to create a diversion. A strategic masterclass for sure.
It really shows how a well-placed spy, a clever plan I mean, can completely change the course of a battle. And it reminds me of something else Sun Tzu stresses: treat your spies well.
He's adamant about that. None should be more liberally rewarded. In no other business should greater secrecy be preserved. High stakes indeed.
They risk their lives, those spies. So protect them, reward them, keep it all secret. That's how you ensure their loyalty. and their effectiveness.
It's not just about money, though, right? It's about trust, loyalty, building a relationship where they feel valued, protected. Otherwise, why would they risk their necks?
Absolutely. It connects back to Sun Tzu's whole philosophy of leadership. Real power doesn't just come from force. It's about inspiring those who serve you, to be loyal, to trust you.
A lesson that applies far beyond the battlefield, I'd say.
Oh, for sure. Leading a team, running a company, even in your personal life, trust and loyalty, essential for success.
And that brings us back to intelligence gathering. It's not all cloak and dagger, is it?
Not at all. Sun Tzu knew it was about understanding human nature, building relationships, using information wisely, strategically to reach your goals.
So those 5 types of spies, local, inward, converted, doomed, surviving, did those roles actually exist back then in ancient China?
It's fascinating to think about,
Hmm.
especially doomed spies, intentionally given false information. Imagine if they were caught.
Yeah.
The consequences.
Yeah, talk about ethical boundaries.
And surviving spies, those sent to gather intel and come back, the courage it took, the skills. I bet their training was intense.
It had to be. Sun Tzu talks about not just finding the right people, but training them rigorously. In observation, discretion, deception, all before modern tech, mind you. It was all about their wits, their memory, blending in, observing without being seen.
Amazing, isn't it? Those human skills, still so vital today, even with all our technology. So much relies on human intelligence, undercover agents, informants, analysts, putting the pieces together. It's still crucial.
And Sun Tzu knew that the info those spies brought back, well, it's only as good as the analysis that follows. Can't just collect data. Got to interpret it, connect the dots, draw conclusions, inform your strategy.
Precisely. He even uses historical examples, the rise of the Yin dynasty, King Wu's success, both aided by skilled spies helping to overthrow corrupt rulers.
So spies as agents of change, bringing about a better society.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
Of course, we have to acknowledge the ethical side, especially with the deception, the manipulation.
Yeah, some of his advice, it can feel a bit morally gray looking at it from our modern perspective.
It's true. But we have to consider the historical context. Warfare back then was brutal. Sun Tzu believed that winning, by any means necessary, was ultimately a way to reduce the suffering, the bloodshed, in the long run.
A difficult question to answer definitively. But the art of war, it makes us think about these things, doesn't it? The complexities of strategy, the choices leaders have to make in times of conflict. It's more than a military manual.
I agree. It's philosophical. Exploring power, morality, the human condition. It's timeless for a reason.
So we've covered the key points from Sun Tzu, but I'm curious what you think. What are the biggest takeaways, the lessons we can apply to our own lives from the art of war?
Great question. I'd say one of the most enduring lessons is the power of observation. Assessment. Like a general studying the terrain before a battle, we need to understand our own challenges, professional, personal, even just everyday life.
Being aware of our surroundings, what threats are out there, what opportunities, planning our actions.
Exactly. Strategic thinking, always thinking a few steps ahead. And another key point, knowing yourself, as well as you know your opponent. Sun Tzu emphasized understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as your adversaries.
So self-awareness is key, and honesty, being realistic about your limitations.
Yes, but also empathy, understanding your opponent, their motivations, fears, what they want. That helps you anticipate their actions, counter their strategies.
It's not just about data then, it's about people. Whether you're negotiating a deal, trying to get a promotion, even dealing with your kids, understanding psychology, using strategic thinking, it can give you an advantage.
Exactly. And the art of war is full of practical advice too, on leadership, communication, managing resources. Sun Tzu talks about choosing the right people for the right jobs, being decisive, adaptable, when things change.
Skills anyone can benefit from.
Absolutely. And don't forget discipline, focus. Sun Tzu believed victory comes from mental, emotional, and physical strength. Having a clear goal, a plan, and sticking to it with unwavering determination.
Powerful stuff. But what about the deception part? Is that something we should be using in our daily lives?
That's a tricky one. It's important to separate manipulation from strategic communication. Sun Tzu was talking about warfare, where the stakes are incredibly high.
So we shouldn't be trying to trick people in our everyday interactions.
Right. Honesty, integrity, they build trust, strong relationships. But what we can learn is how to frame our message in a way that resonates with people. Highlighting strengths, downplaying weaknesses, maybe using a little humor, or telling a story to make your point. Persuasively, I mean.
Being clever but ethical.
Exactly. Influencing people's perceptions, guiding them toward a desired outcome. but always ethically.
Okay, we've really unpacked Sun Tzu's teachings. One last question. What's the biggest misconception people have about The Art of War, do you think?
Good one. I think it's that it's a book about violence, aggression. Sun Tzu talks about war, yes, but his goal, to avoid conflict. He said it best. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
So achieve your goals through strategy, diplomacy, even psychological warfare, but not brute force.
Exactly. The best way to win a war. Prevent it from happening in the first place. Choose your battles wisely. Only engage in conflict when you absolutely have to.
Knowing when to fight and when to walk away.
There you go. A profound lesson, applicable to anyone's life. Don't have to take on every argument, every insult. Try to win every single battle. Sometimes walking away is the most strategic move. Focus your energy on what truly matters.
It's a good reminder. Strategy isn't always about winning. It's about making choices that align with your values, that help you achieve your long-term goals.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a perfect note to end on, I think.
I agree. We covered a lot of ground today, but this feels like just the beginning of our exploration of the art of war. Its wisdom is timeless.
It really is.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. And to our listener, we leave you with this, something to think about.
Sun Tzu's insights into strategy, deception, intelligence, they're just as relevant now as they were centuries ago.
Whether you're facing a tough negotiation, a personal challenge, even just navigating this complex world we live in.
His wisdom offers valuable lessons.
So the question is, what strategies can you take from Sun Tzu, from his playbook, to gain an advantage in your own battles, right? Those challenges we all face.
Remember, though, Sun Tzu's real aim, it wasn't to glorify war, it was to minimize it.
To avoid it, if possible.
Exactly. His teachings remind us that observation, planning, understanding people, those are essential tools.
Not just for winning battles, but for, well, achieving success in any part of life.
And he really emphasizes that true strength is not just about physical power, it's about mental fortitude, emotional intelligence, that ability to adapt.
When things change. Because they always do.
They do. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this.
A final thought, something to ponder.
What strategies can you borrow from Sun Tzu to achieve victory in your own life?
How can you use his principles, those ideas about preparation, deception, intelligence, to navigate the challenges and the opportunities that are out there waiting for you?
Keep those strategic minds sharp.
And remember, forewarned is forearmed.